Today we'll be painting this amazing turquoise bottle, the ATB. The same methods that we're about to use can be used to paint any kind of glassy, shiny, transparency things. Here's another quick painting I've just finished using the exact same techniques. And we're also going to be using a technique called pulling. If you haven't been following the course and you're jumping in here, then have at it. But if you find it a little advanced, then just check out the other tutorials in the series. They are linked in the description and will get you up to speed. This painting is going to require patience and a really steady hand, but it's just super satisfying when you see it come together. Don't worry too much if you make little mistakes along the way. Continue with the painting until it's complete. It'll give you the opportunity to practice the techniques we're developing, and the next time you'll make fewer mistakes. Watercolor pulling. What is it? Put some watercolor paint on a piece of paper, pull it about with the brush. There you go, that's watercolor pulling. But wait, there's more. This simple technique can be used for lots of different blending effects. To create a short blend using a clean and slightly damp brush like this. To create graduated details like this. To create a bleed like this. And of course anything in between. We're going to use watercolor pulling extensively in this tutorial, so let's have a practice. Start by getting a blank sheet of paper. Since we'll be working exclusively with the small brush to achieve these effects in the painting, this is what we'll use to practice. You can take the paper down if you like. I've only done it because it helps keep it still while I'm filming. Blue-green is the colour we'll be using for the real painting, so I've used it for the practice too. Add a small dot of paint to the paper, and then wash off the brush. With the brush still loaded with water, try pulling the dot of paint downwards and see how far you can pull it. Add another dot, a smaller one this time. Clean off the brush and then dab off most of the water on tissue, leaving the brush damp but not wet. Then try the same thing, pulling the paint down the page. See if you can get a nice fade on the line. Practice this a few times to get used to how much water you need on the brush and how much paint you need on the paper. Now try the same thing with a line. Firstly paint the line, and then wash and partially dry the brush and try extending the line down the page. Practice this a few times to see how smooth a blend you can get. The point of doing this is to start getting a more precise control over how much paint and water you need to create this kind of blend. Now paint a small vertical line here. Again, wash your paintbrush, and while it is loaded with water, brush the line out to the right with small vertical strokes like this. Try the same thing again, but this time completely dry your brush and see what difference it makes. Try the same thing again, and this time, after washing your brush, dab only a bit of the water off, leaving it slightly damp. See how much of a smooth blend you can get out to the right. Practice it a few times. You can add more paint or water if you like, or go over the same area a few times to achieve a smooth blend, from saturated to transparent. Once you feel confident that you can create a smooth blend in this way, move on to the next pulling technique. Start the same way by putting down a vertical line of paint, and then paint the area to the right of it with just clean water. Gradually paint the clean water up to the line of paint until you eventually connect to it. The paint will bleed into the water immediately. Practice this a couple of times to get a feeling for how it works. Vary the amount of paint and water until you feel comfortable with it. And then lastly, try the same techniques with longer lines, both going over the paint with a damp brush to pull it to the right, and painting the paper to the right of the line with water until it connects. See if you can create a long blend and a really short one. If you feel confident you can achieve a good controlled blend using these techniques, then you're ready to tackle the main painting. If not, then hey, maybe go for it anyway. If it goes pear-shaped, you can always practice some more later. Get your Chromatek tutorial pad out and locate this template, or download it from the link in the description and print it on watercolor paper. Tape it to your board, stretch it if you like. The tutorial for stretching watercolor paper is linked in the description. Here's the image this painting's based on. We've licensed it from Shutterstock, so I can't give you the photo to download, but you can take a screenshot of this. It's a good idea to have the photo visible for the duration of this tutorial, so that you can frequently reference it. I'll put it up there in the corner, but having it open full screen in the background would be a really good idea too, as it's very detailed. We did not include all the intricate details of the photo in the template, and that's on purpose. It would have been far too detailed and really confusing. But trust me, if you just break this picture down into small sections and tackle them one at a time, then you'll be fine. We'll start by working on the less defined elements of the bottle, the blurred gradients and shading that creates the underlying shape. And then we'll add all the hard detailed reflections over the top. Blue-green works great for this painting and doesn't need to be mixed with any other colour to create the base layer. Make sure you mix up plenty of it. We're going to be creating a gradient that looks like this. Start by painting a thin wash of clean water. Make sure you avoid these two highlight areas, which we want to remain clear of paint. Once you've got a thin, even glaze of water over the areas you want to paint, add the paint to the central area. Then clean and slightly dry the brush and blend the paint into the thin layer of water. As you can see, I'm not adding any additional colour to the water yet. I'm just using the paint that's already on the paper. Whenever your brush becomes too loaded with paint, dry it off on tissue. That way you'll avoid blending the paint further than you want to. Once you've done all that you can with the paint you've already added, take a good look at the reference and make a call on whether you need to add more paint to any other areas. To avoid adding too much at once, you can pick up some paint on the brush and then dab most of it off on tissue. I've actually gone a little bit over the reflections, so I'm going to correct those little mistakes by picking up the paint with a cotton bud. That's fantastic! Look, there's your base layer done. Make sure you let it dry completely, or use a hairdryer to speed up the process if you don't like watching paint dry. Now we're going to start painting the detailed reflections. Add a bit of Prussian blue and black to the original mix along with a little bit more blue-green until you get the right colour and opacity of paint. You can see here I'm testing it over the original paint to get an accurate idea of what it will look like when complete. Because I'm right-handed, I'm going to paint this from top to bottom and left to right. If you're left-handed, you might want to consider doing it from right to left. We'll start by painting the darkest elements of the details. And in areas where the details fade or have graduation, we'll use the pulling techniques that we practiced earlier to draw out the paint and create the fade. For example here, where there's a grad on the top lip of the bottle, I'm going to clean the brush and dry it a little so it's still damp, and then I'm going to create the fade here. and another one here. This is a really detailed area, and there's a much clearer example of the technique being used in just a moment. The whole time I'm painting this, I'm constantly checking the reference photo to make sure I'm following it as closely as possible. Here we go, here's the example I was talking about. I'm painting this hard reflection down the side of the bottle, then cleaning the brush and dabbing off most of the water before using the pulling technique to pull the paint down while simultaneously fading it a little bit. And now I'll just continue to add paint and use the pulling technique to create the hard reflections down the left side of the bottle. I'm sure you don't need me to narrate every single line of this painting for you. You've got this. Here there's a hard line and a fade to the right of it. This is one of the things we practiced at the beginning. Add some more paint to the line if it's completely dry, and then clean off the brush before pulling the paint out to the right. Collect some paint on a damp brush and then remove most of it on the tissue to create this lighter line here. Now we're going to paint in the larger detailed area around the base of the bottle. We'll break the areas down into simpler sections and then tackle them one at a time. Start by painting a thin wash of water to the first area. Then add the paint. Whoops, that's a bit too much. I'm going to dry off my brush and use it to pick up some of that excess paint. Now I'll blend it out into the area that I'm painting. You can see I've made a little mistake here, so I'll sort that out. I need to add a little bit more water to the area that I'm currently painting. I'll add more paint and then start to blend it into the water that's on the paper. You can see the paper's a bit too dry on this side, so the paint isn't spreading. I'll add a little more water to make sure it doesn't dry, and then I can work with it. If you need to add more paint to achieve the right effect, then go for it. I think the left side needs to be a bit darker, so I'll add a little bit more paint. It's still damp, so I can blend it really easily. I'm going to dry this section before painting the next one. They're right next to each other, and I want to avoid any bleeding. Now it's dry, and I can continue painting the other area around the base of the bottle. A few more little mistakes to pick up. Always worthwhile having these cotton buds handy. I only started using them for this recently, but they're really great for cleaning up small areas. By now you probably have a good understanding of what I'm doing here, using a water wash and then adding paint to it. I'll move back to adding details to the very base of the bottle, and then go back over the area we just painted and add darker details over the lighter ones. Following that, I'm going to move on to filling the details on the right hand side of the bottle. I'm going to dry the painting quickly before adding some broader details to the right hand side. I'm now going to do another pass of the whole painting, adding any little details that I may have missed earlier. I think there are a few lighter details here as well that need to be added, so I've diluted down a little bit of the paint to use for this. And now we're pretty much done. The only thing left that I know is going to make a huge difference is the shadow. Me, I like to leave the shadow right to the end. You'll see some people paint it first, and there's no real right or wrong order to it. It's totally up to you. To paint the shadow, I'm going to mix the current colour with a little bit of black and then dilute it down. Then I'll paint in the rough area of the shadow just with water. If you want to outline the shadow with pencil first to make it a bit easier, then you go for it. I'll add paint here and here. I think it needs to be a bit darker, so I'll add a little more. And without really doing anything, you can see it makes the bottle seem more solid, but it needs to be blended properly to look really good. There we go. I'm pretty happy with that. Hopefully you have something that looks fairly similar. Don't worry if you don't though. This is quite an advanced tutorial and the techniques and detail painting require a lot of practice to get right. Give it another go or keep practicing with our other tutorials and circle back to this one again later. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you've been following the course, then I'm really stoked you've come on this journey with us, and congratulations for finishing it. I'm sure you've developed some solid skills that you can apply to your own paintings right away. Hit us up through our website and share some of your work. We'd really love to see it. We've got a ton more awesome content heading your way, so make sure you hit subscribe and click that notification thingy. And if you have any questions or suggestions, then just pop them in the comments below and we'll do our best to get back to you. As always, thanks for watching and sending you happy vibes from Japan.